And Matthias de Stefano speaks about Atlantis 12,000 years ago, the age of Leo, the shift in consciousness that brought a new generation of politics that controlled with war and order, later adding a tsunami. We are now in the age of Aquarius, mirroring Leo. So are we also finishing a process like that? And he says Aquarius is a free era that should not be afraid of the change, but I can't help but wonder, are we triggering a tsunami or disaster as well?
Well, again, it depends upon what path you choose. It is a free age for you to make a decision about which direction to go so that you do not necessarily repeat the Atlantean tableau. So it's up to all of you. Don't be afraid of change, but guide yourselves according to the vibration you prefer, acting on the formula and the passion that we have given to all of you in the form of an instruction manual. And you will guide yourself in the direction to create an experience of shifting to variations and versions of Earth that will be more positive than negative. There will still be those that will go down the negative road and may experience a reappearance of the Atlantean theme of destruction. But again, remember, through the splitting prism, you have an opportunity to go to different versions of Earth. So some will experience the negativity and some will experience the positivity. It depends on what path you take. But it is the age in which you get to decide. That's the freedom of Aquarius. That's the freedom of water. Things can shift easily in a liquid way. Nothing is frozen, not yet.
You shared with us that there was another civilization before Atlantis, and it had to do with Lemuria and Atlantis. And so can you tell us a little more about the Lemurian civilization?
Yes, they were again more direct offshoots of the Anunnaki. Many of them had slightly tinted blue skin. They existed in, again, the Asian continent and are remembered to some degree by some of the ancient Indian so-called gods that have blue skin, which is a direct representation of some of the ancient Anunnaki, but also a representation to some degree of the later Lemurians, or Muans, as they called their area, Mu. Lemuria is a later appellation given by a more modern person. So the Muans, occupying the South Pacific area of land masses that have now submerged under the ocean, was a more natural civilization, more connected to nature, built some structures, but not as many as you would think, and built them in a more natural way. Had a stronger sense of telepathy, a stronger sense of communication with all things in nature, were truly people of the land. And it was a very lush environment in which they lived, which is why they didn't necessarily need too many structures. It is similar to the idea in your modern time of Hawaii, which is one of the last remnants of the Muan civilization above the ocean, in that it has a very natural sort of paradise kind of atmosphere where it's easy to live outside. Most of Mu was like this before the destructions. And again, many of the Muans did embark on sea voyages. They were great sailors and moved across to the idea of the American continents, North, Central, and South, and created different phases of migrations that, in crossing those continents, ultimately wound up as the colonists that started Atlantis.
Lemuria was also destroyed. Was it for the same reasons as Atlantis? And is there a theme other than that one these days?
The idea of the Muans' destruction is more of the natural cycles of the Earth. Land masses breaking up because of volcanic and earthquake activity, submergence because of certain gas pockets under the ocean opening up. But the idea, again, is that there are cycles on the Earth. Earth is one planet of great cycles. And therefore, many civilizations that have made Earth their home have experienced these cycles as an opportunity to clean the slate and start fresh, to go in different directions, taking advantage of the cycles of what appear to be destruction in a positive way can allow civilizations to grow and to learn and to change very rapidly into a new kind of civilization with new perspectives, new understandings, and new opportunities. So take advantage of the earth cycles in a positive way, and civilizations can evolve very rapidly.
Are the people of the Caribbean linked to the survivors of Atlantis?
Some of them, yes.
Okay. And were the Atlanteans in close contact with cetaceans? Could they communicate with them? And are there ways to communicate now with the cetacean nation?
Yes, they communicated at their peak very readily. And as we have said before, many of their temples were built close to the ocean with aqueducts and passageways for dolphins to come in and partake of many of the ceremonies that they may have created in Atlantis. And there was a lot of telepathic communication between Atlanteans at their peak and the cetacean nations of the world, which you are now rediscovering. Again, look to the idea that there are patterns within the cetacean languages, as well as increasing the idea of empathic and telepathic communication with them by coming from your heart and transferring images from your mind to them and receiving images from their minds to you. So it's all about the idea of resonance, the proper state of being, and the imagery that you can conjure in your minds that can create a bond, once again, between humans and cetaceans.
And what are one of the benefits that they received from their communication with the cetaceans that perhaps we don't really comprehend as being available to us?
The riches of the ocean. The cetaceans were very good at communicating with their fishermen as to where the fish were, and also what elements could be found in the ocean floor that could be mined that would help with Atlantean technology. So in the world of the sea, the dolphins and other cetaceans would communicate to the Atlanteans things that they required for the building up of the Atlantean civilization and the feeding of the peoples of the land. They were very rich in terms of mining also things like kelp and sea vegetables.
And how did they communicate this information to the Atlanteans?
As we said, through the idea of imagery in the mind telepathically, in the idea of showing them areas that they were somewhat familiar with. In other words, an image that says, go here, an image of the thing that they sought, thus understanding that that existed in the area that they were familiar with visually.
I see. Was hubris purely the spiritual aspect in a law of attraction sense that drew the comet to destroy Atlantis? And did their technology draw the comet in?
Not literally draw the comet in, but again, vibrationally, attracting to themselves that particular choice, that particular version of Earth. Now, again, do remember, there are other versions of Earth where Atlantis was not destroyed, and many different kinds of affectations in between. Simply, you are dealing with the timeline here because of choices that you have all made collectively, that you are dealing with that particular timeline where the Atlantean vibration of breaking into the positive and negative side, and the negative side becoming more dominant, what you call hubris, and the idea of self-destructive tendencies to draw themselves, to shift themselves into the version of the timeline that contain the idea of cometary destruction and devastation. So again, remember, there are many versions of Earth where Atlantis was not destroyed.
And as far as the idea of I know this depends on what Earth you're on, but how are we on Earth in terms of avoiding the Atlantean cataclysm this time? Or are we still in that process of seemingly replaying what happened?
Again, some of you are shifting to worlds where that won't occur, and some of you are shifting to worlds where it will. You have to take this on an individual basis or even a small group basis as to what vibration and resonance you are setting up for yourselves to navigate in what direction you are going. So it cannot just be one answer for one Earth.
So I guess the idea that if you see a lot happening on the earth you're on that appears to be going in that direction, you still have to remember the splitting prism concept and the idea of the glass wall.
Yes.
So just because you can see it doesn't mean you're on the earth that's going for the same trajectory.
For now, yes. For now, you are allowed to see that which you do not choose in order to give those on that side of the wall the opportunity to see you and to change their minds if they're going in a destructive direction. Of course, those on the positive side can also still choose to go in a destructive direction, which is why we're saying you now have the ability to choose. This is the time of choosing. This is the fluidity that is being discussed here, where everything is still a free choice. You can see realities that you don't necessarily exist in, but still are capable of choosing to exist in them. So again, until this crystallizes, seeing something that is not vibrationally compatible with you does not mean, if you stay in a positive state, that you are actually existing in that reality. But if you stay positive, eventually you will no longer experience those particular abilities to see those things, and those in the negative realities will no longer experience the ability to choose to go in a positive direction by seeing living examples, because they will have shut them out and blinded themselves to those positive examples they could have chosen eventually in the years to come.
And the idea of this cataclysm, that wouldn't necessarily be in the form of attracting a comet. It would be using whatever is available, in a sense.
Possibly so, but again, it depends on the reality that you are shifting to. It would be, in a sense, ironic, and many people gravitate towards irony to draw or attract the same thing that destroyed Atlantis. So many may experience that, but others may experience the concept of cataclysm in a different way, a lighter way, something that they can get through, something they can deal with, something they can relate to and survive more easily. Again, you have to understand that there's a spectrum here. It's not just this or that. It's many different things in between, and many different people, based on their vibration, will choose to experience transformation in a variety of ways.
So that idea of attracting nuclear war. Well, first of all, is that true for all Earths, that the ETs would, in a sense, inhibit?
No, it is not true for all Earths, because as we have said, everything exists now. And there are already Earths that coexist alongside what you're experiencing that have already destroyed themselves utterly.
So the Earth you are speaking to,
Of
for
course.
sure, there will be some on that Earth also that would maybe experience limited nuclear experience, but
No, no,
as long as I
no, no, no. We are not communicating a vibration of frequency to that particular reality.
Okay.
We are doing so less and less. You have to understand, our initial contact, our initial spread, different versions of us that are communicating with different versions of Earth are becoming fewer and fewer, all coalescing into only those versions that will be more representative of the vibration that we are compatible with, in order for you to have contact with all those different versions of us. So the ones that are choosing to go in more negative directions, different versions of us unplug from, because they are choosing not to experience the vibration version of us.
Okay, so when you were talking about that the ETs wouldn't intervene if it was a limited nuclear kind of incident,
Yes.
does that mean that anybody who experiences that would not be aligned essentially with the future or the reality that is representative of your communication?
At this time, not necessarily, because the fact that we have told you that there can be an allowance for a limited nuclear experience is still within the vibration of the potential of surviving that and coming out of it in a much more positive way, making certain decisions based on that experience. So that's still part of the connection of the possibility of different Earths to experience open contact, but it depends on how you use such an experience. which we'll be observing.